Do you know how hard it is to contain helium?
They call it full duration, like every time. Yeah, every time they change the duration of how long the static fire is.
Full duration is as long as I say it's gonna be.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tomorrow. It has been a interesting and exciting week with lots of updates in the rocket industry. We've had a successful crew launch. We've got some interesting developments that are happening at launch sites at Cape Canaveral that we need to discuss. SpaceX is having all sorts of awesome progress with their Starship program and the Dragon program, and so many other things that happened this week, including Gilmore Space's first launch attempt and some really cool updates at NASA. I'm Space Mike, and I am joined today by Detta, who will be talking about all sorts of things physics related and keeping us grounded on Earth. I'm also joined by Jared, our resident astronomer and one of our rocket experts. I think we're all a little bit of at least armchair experts here. We also have Ryan Caton, who is definitely a rocket expert and most knowledgeable of all things breaking news. So thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you for joining us today and talking about all the cool things that have been happening this week. So, yeah, first off, right off the bat, we finally got the Crew-11 launch. Well, I say finally; it was only delayed by one day, but still really exciting to see that we finally got that launched off. Was anyone else able to catch that live, or for the Thursday and Friday attempts?
I must have thought it was a Rocket Lab launch. I missed it.
You're getting them
Well,
confused. You're getting them
I
confused.
I didn't miss it. It was a really nice flight. I watched the whole thing from start to finish. So pretty
It
good.
was really good, yeah. And I know there's just a small little subtle changes, but there's a lot of really cool things that um, new views that we keep seeing and little improvements that SpaceX makes to their stream. And I love to see it. A couple of those shots we'll get to a little bit later for the docking. But yeah, everything went well for the launch of Crew-11. And this had 4 new crew members on board. Mike Fink, now on his 4th space flight. He is a veteran of the space shuttle program as well as 2 Soyuz flights. We also had Xena Cardman on her first flight as the 2 representatives from NASA. And actually, let me switch this over to a different tab, and we can watch the undocking of the Dragon after the successful launch, which was great to see. Also on board were Japanese astronaut Kamiya Yui and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov. So really cool to see this launch, and this crew is going to have some pretty exciting times ahead of them as they are going to have quite a few new visitors, including the Japanese HTV-X vehicle, their new cargo vehicle. And Mike Fink even dropped hints that they might potentially see a Starliner flight before they return home, which might be the cargo version that NASA has talked about doing first before they try to resume crewed flights with Starliner. And then
I'm sorry. I just can't get over how amazing this footage looks.
wasn't that a beautiful shot? I mean, holy cow. I'm just going to rewind that just a little bit because what a beautiful shot that we got there from the upper stage of. I mean, we've seen this a couple of times before, but I think this might be the prettiest one of these separations here, which I think is just incredible. So
There's
Late
really
morning
something.
launches from the Cape is just beautiful because you have the daylight conditions for the launch, but then as you get into orbit, you're not hitting orbital nighttime straight away, so you actually get a good half hour of solid daylight views from orbit.
Yeah, then there's like the supposition of the circle of the adapter and the circle of the Earth, and the fins are perfectly aligned with the horizon. Like, oh, that's a gorgeous shot.
And speaking of gorgeous shots, I would actually like to switch over to the shots of during docking because they had some incredible shots of the. Come on, play. What's going on here? Sorry, my system's freezing up here. They had some incredible shots of the ISS during their rendezvous. Here we go. Now it's finally going. And I just couldn't believe how beautiful some of these shots were. It reminded me of the last, and sorry, I should have scrolled forward just a little bit further. It reminded me of, here we go, the last flyover that the
Dude.
space shuttle did. Do you remember that one?
Wow.
That looks just as good, if not a little bit better than
The
that.
Mhm.
are you talking about the STS-134 fly around when they did
Mhm.
that? Yeah.
The
Oh
backflip
my
maneuver.
You're
gosh.
right. That was 134, not the last flight, 135. My bad.
Wow.
I
Well,
like
it's a
the
lot.
I like the little icons showing that the thrusters that are active.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Bottom right corner there. Although,
That's awesome.
honestly, I don't know why they have the little graphic of the back of the trunk because, there's no thrusters back there right now, as far as I know. There's going to be, well, maybe not thrusters, but there's gonna be some fuel tanks back there on their upcoming boost trunk for CRS-33, but far as I know, there's no thrusters, so not sure why we have the graphic of the back of, the Dragon trunk, but in any case, I love seeing that too, those shots,
Look at that thing.
puffs of
Look at that. How
just
could you not
incredible
be
view.
amazed by that? Look at that.
And actually my favorite, like, this is beautiful shot right here, but actually my favorite is just a little bit further ahead, where we start getting some of the night shots, or rather not the night shot, but the last little bit of glow of the International Space Station, before it goes to night. Should be coming up here in just a couple of seconds. Um, Sorry, they have their delay. I believe it's in about, yeah, right here. Just that last little bit of illuminated glow behind it before they go into orbital sunset and it goes dark.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, for the rest of the docking process, it's completely dark and we only see their running lights for most of it. But yeah, incredible shots.
Turn your high beams off. Damn it. These HIDs aren't aligned.
And of course, even though these are some amazing shots, there is one more camera view that I would love to see someday. Do you guys remember during the Polaris mission where they were doing the spacewalk, how they had a camera inside of the nose cone? I wish that we had a like fisheye lens of that, especially for the last moments leading up to docking from that view. We do get a view of the docking port, but it's more like the guidance view. I would love to see some sort of, you know, uh, 360, not even 360, but just a fisheye lens view going into the final docking from a camera that's inside the nose cone. Anyway, that's just me though. Got to be ungrateful despite all these beautiful views that we're getting.
That would be sick. So I still gotta say my favorite docking footage ever is from the IMAX film Mission to Mir. And it's the one where the shuttle is actually docking with Mir, and they have it's recorded from an IMAX camera in the aft portion of the shuttle's payload bay. And it's just so cool because I show it to people as an example of what docking really looks like. It's like, no, it's not the Millennium Falcon sweeping in and lining up and then doing like a power slide into. It's like, no, it's slow.
It's very,
It's
very
because
slow.
these are
It's
like
it's always the Blue Danube playing.
yes, and it's like it's the hundreds of tons, just very carefully coming together. So yeah, no Pan Am shuttle, unfortunately. So darn.
Well, this mission, despite the cool things that are going to happen during their time at the International Space Station, this mission was historic for another reason. And I'd actually like to pass it off to Ryan, if you wouldn't mind talking about this. And of course, I'm talking about the final landing at LZ-1, Landing Zone 1. Can you tell us a little bit more about why this is the final landing and what the plan is for this site?
Yeah, so the booster made B-1094, I believe, off the top of my head, made a successful landing back to landing zone 1. As you may be aware, SpaceX has 2 ground landing pads. Oh, look at this, we're getting some wonderful Google Maps vision here as well. So that circle, the larger circle in the bottom right, that is landing zone 1. That was the original landing pad built by SpaceX all the way back in the ancient times of 2015. And the other one in the top left, just a bit more northwest of landing zone 1, that's landing zone 2. Slightly smaller because SpaceX realized they didn't need, so much concrete. and of course they've used them in conjunction 9 times for Falcon Heavy, double RTLS landings. They've used Landing Zone 2, I believe off the top of my head, 3 times for Falcon 9 first stage recoveries, and they've used the Landing Zone 1 overall 53 times with 54 attempts. Of course, CRS-16 not making it back to dry land in one piece.
right.
Anyways, so this is the final time SpaceX is going to be returning a booster to that larger pad, to Landing Zone 1, because if you didn't know, Landing Zone 1 and 2 is actually officially known as Launch Complex 13. That site during the 50s and 60s was a launch pad for the Atlas family, originally used for suborbital ICBM tests of the Atlas rocket, later used for orbital flights of the Atlas Agena rocket, famously launched Mariner 3, which didn't really make it that far, as you may know. That's one of the Atlas launches that took place from that pad. And it hadn't been used since the 1970s, the start of the 70s, until it was taken over by SpaceX. The US Air Force at the time leased it out to SpaceX in 2015. They then built Landing Zone 1. A couple of years later, they built Landing Zone 2. So that word there is quite critical. It was leased to SpaceX originally for a 5-year term, later obviously extended. And because of that lease, the Space Force, as they have now become, they want the land back, because a couple of years ago they announced they were, reassigning it or releasing it to 2 different companies, Via Space and Phantom Space, 2 small sat launch providers who haven't really done anything yet, but we'll have to wait and see. The intention is for them to share that complex, both of them with their own launch pads within the grounds of Launch Complex 13, and therefore SpaceX having to vacate the site because the Space Force have decided to lease it to these 2 different companies. Why did the Space Force decide to do that? Well, it essentially stems from a new policy put in place by Space Launch Delta 45, who control the Eastern Range there. They don't want the separate launch pads and landing pads anymore. They want everything to be confined to a single launch complex, so they don't have to be closing off separate areas for one launch pad, a different area for a landing pad. That's to try to minimize disruption, because of course we have so many different launch operators at the Cape now. We have, literally in the last few weeks, Relativity and Stoke have been posting their launch pad construction updates, which we've discussed on the show. We have Blue Origin, United Launch Alliance, Firefly.
And if you go
so
back
many
to
different
that map
companies
for
doing
just a
things.
second, let's just see how close all those are to all of this. So you got the landing zone
Exactly.
1 and 2. South of them, Launch Complex 12 and 11 are used for storage sites for Blue Origin, who operates here out of Space Launch Complex 36. That's south of the landing zones. Right next to the landing zone for Launch Complex 14, that's where Stoke Space is going to be launching from and landing once they get to that point. Just a little bit north of that, nobody's using this one, but
Are they going to be getting rid of the Gemini Memorial?
Kind of, sorta. There is a thing that I saw about that, how they are like moving it, preserving it somehow, but they aren't destroying it. That's for sure. And kind of similar thing that was a thing down here in Launch Complex 11, or excuse me, no. Yeah, no, it was 11. There was I believe, a Mercury memorial that was near there that has just been moved to a different spot, but was also preserved when Blue Origin took over that spot. But yeah, Stoke Space right next door. You got Relativity Space just a little bit north of that, and then you have Firefly space at Slick 20 just a little bit north of that before you get into the ULA and SpaceX launch sites. So yeah, a lot of stuff right there clustered together in Missile Row. So it makes a lot of sense to move the landing zones from there right next door to these other pads to ones that are closer to the launch site. And actually, if we look at 39A, even on these images, these old images, you can kind of see a couple of spots where eventually the new landing zones will go nearby their existing launch tower and the one that they are building for Starship. So yeah, just makes sense, like Ryan was saying, to have everything kind of go over to launching and landing from the same complex. It makes sense to me to help like mitigate the risk, danger to other companies. That's what I would assume anyway.
Yeah. It's one of those things that the range is saying, if we consolidate one company's activities to one specific launch pad, takes off from one place, lands at the same place, the range is saying that should speed up cadence across everybody, because of course I'm saying there's so many different companies with so many different launch pads at the Cape, but at the end of the day, the range has authority over what launches when and what lands when and where that happens when that happens. So if the range can't support it, you're in a bit of a muddle. So that's one of those things the range is implementing to try and ease operations with each company, increase launch cadence, make it a bit easier on the range, make it a bit easier with the operations of all these different companies. So it's going to be very exciting going forwards. And I do have to say, although it's sad to see, such a historic site, this is where the first ever landing of an orbital class booster took place, first ever propulsive landing of an orbital class booster. It is sad to see it go, but for viewers at home and in person, I would prefer to see a double sonic boom return at Launch Complex 39A, because you can actually see that instead of it being hidden behind the trees 10, 14 miles south on the coast, right? I want to see these boosters actually come back to the Launch Complex. That I'm very much looking forward to.
That's going to be cool for sure.
You should come on over to Vandenberg. You can definitely see. Oh, nope, not at all. Nope. There's not even the fog. There's hills.
Aravel says it must be so cool being a site director there and getting to watch all of this activity after it being built up for so many years.
Right? To be a fly on the wall during those planning meetings. Yeah, that must be a super cool job.
Assuming that's been a contiguous role.
I believe they did just have a some sort of new. I don't recall the details, but I remember seeing something about how I think that they just got a new director recently, like the commanding officer of the space wing, so to speak. Again, don't remember the details. I just remember there being something about a changeover there, but. Obviously, the person that they is the new director has been working there for quite some time, so intimately familiar with all the operations. I'm sorry I don't remember the names right now or even when this occurred, but
how dare you?
Yeah. Whoops. A lot of cool progress, though, and I love seeing these updates and that all these old missile sites that haven't been used since the 60s or 70s are being reactivated, and we're going to get all these companies launching from there. That's going to be exciting and a good problem to have when there's so much traffic going on there that they're literally having competitions and complaints against one another of, well, we're ready to launch, but our next door neighbor had the range first, so whenever you're ready, we're ready to go. I don't know. That would be fun though. It's still exciting to see, though. Well, let's move right along then. It's also been another busy week for SpaceX in terms of their Starship program. We finally got well, first of all, we had Ship 36 that blew up at Massey's and caused quite a bit of damage there, which is unfortunate. And SpaceX, with their ingenuity and scrappiness, just kind of did a refit of the OLM launch tower, the launch mount, and did the static fire of Ship 37 there. And quite surprising to see this here, actually. Let me pull up at least this video here. This is one of their, the full duration static test fire. They did one static fire before this of just a single engine, which is what's required for the engine relight test and a couple other maneuvers. And this was the full duration with all 6 engines on the Starship, the upper stage of the super heavy Starship stack. So awesome to see this progress. And with these steps out of the way, with the cryo testing done, the static fires out of the way, it seems to me like they just need to finish the processing of Starship itself, get a lot of the finish up the tile work and any other add-ons, and get the booster ready and start stacking these guys. So it's looking very real, like this might actually happen this month, the month of August. We are now in August 3rd and well into the third quarter of the year. So exciting to see this, and here's hoping that everything gets back on track with the Starship program and that Flight 10 will be a successful flight.
SpaceX is always quite loose with their definition of full duration static fire, full duration static
You're
fire.
right. That wasn't full duration. You're right.
And
they
successful.
yeah, they call it full duration like every time. yeah, every time they change the duration of how long the static fire is. For example, this one was about 10 seconds long because they only had 10 seconds roughly of that deluge system at the pad. The last time they actually managed to get to a 6-engine static fire with ship 35 was 60 seconds long. Ship 34 was 60 seconds long. Then they did some, kind of like 10, 15-second tests with ships earlier than that. Like, full duration, it's one of those. It's just one of those. It's advertising more than technical details, I think.
I think you're right. I think you're right about that because we haven't gotten this 60-second burn was the last one that I believe was a full duration. So, um, but yeah, aside from any other major complications, it's looking to me like this might actually happen. Of course, there's still a lot that has to happen to get ready for the next flight, but man, really hoping that they're able to get things back on track and finish up a lot of the tests that they have been doing for this year. Try to get the orbital relight of the engine, do the deployment of the demo Starlinks. They're just hunks of metal. It's not actually a Starlink, but get all those tests out of the way so we can actually get to the next major step of getting all the way into orbit and then move on to the propellant testing and do those types of rendezvous and docking and get the program moving forward. So
Stan J notes that full duration means no premature shutdown. So as long as they intended, I guess.
Yeah, but what does the full mean? Like a full duration test, just looking at this logically, if you were testing something for the full duration, surely you test it the amount of time it's fired during the flight, which is, it fires from about 3-ish minutes to 8-ish minutes. So that would be about a
No,
long.
Ryan, that would be a
That's
full
what the
flight
duration would
duration.
be.
That would be a full
Well,
flight duration.
oh,
details. And actually,
full duration is as long as I say it's going to be.
Remember, everybody, your communications department knows more than the engineering department does.
Yeah.
Just follow what they say.
Oh, yeah. Don't forget launch license and investigation. Real quick, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Liam Kennedy, ISS Above, who just gifted a membership. Thank you very much, Liam. Much appreciated. Aside from that, I don't know about you guys, but
full grown men still arguing about full duration and prematurity.
Yeah.
No comment. I don't know about you guys, but I'm actually really excited about the boost trunk that SpaceX is working on. That'll be on their upcoming cargo mission, CRS-33. I haven't gotten a ton of details yet as to how many fuel tanks that they might put inside of the trunk, but the purpose of doing this is so that they can continue to do those tests of the maneuver of the Dragon capsule to reboost the station and help not trim, but circularize its orbit a bit to help mitigate the orbital decay that it has. Normally, that's done by the Progress spacecraft. This is also to help gain data for the eventual deorbit vehicle that SpaceX has gotten a contract for to deorbit the space station in 2030 or possibly sooner if some people get their way. We'll see. So yeah, I'm excited to see this. And honestly, I don't know about you guys, but something that I've been kind of sad about is the lack of stuff that gets put into the Dragon trunk. In a lot of the early flights, we had stuff put in there like the international docking adapter. We had the rollout solar arrays on some of those flights. A handful of experiments that are eventually put on the express logistics carrier on the outside of the space station. And it just seems like the majority of the flights don't have anything back there. And it's kind of sad to see. So even though this is just fuel tanks to do this boost maneuver, I'm still thinking that it's great that we finally have that. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of hoping that they make it permanent so that the trunk is actually a real service module. Is that just me? Or
would that preclude cargo space in the future, maybe?
in the future, yes, for anyone who wants to do external cargo. But again,
well, like if there's a resupply mission, or if you could combine a crew flight with a resupply mission by using the trunk, right?
You could if you wanted to. And that's a big question that I've had for some time is there's more than enough fuel to do so. Like if they were to add, I don't remember what the exact weight is right now. It's not a lot, but if they were to add more stuff into the trunk, all that would mean is that the booster, instead of landing back at the launch site at one of the landing zones that we have now or one of the future ones that are about to be built, they can just still land the booster on one of the drone ships at sea for whatever that extra weight of payload that they might put back there. So with a lot of these crew missions and even the cargo missions that we see landing back at the landing zone, that means that they had excess. There was an excess there where they could have put more stuff on the mission, but didn't. And I don't know why. Is that a lack of planning from the International Space Station managers? Is there just not a whole lot of external payload stuff that gets exposed to the vacuum of space that is on the manifest? That I don't know, but I would certainly love to see this area get used a lot more since they have the payload capacity to add more in there. And it would just necessitate doing a drone ship landing instead of a landing back at the landing zone, unless it's just a little bit of extra weight, in which case you still could do a landing back at the landing zone. So I honestly don't know why, because they totally could add at least another 100, 200 pounds of material back there.
Hmm.
I believe
It's
the
actually
new boost trunk is also going to be getting some extra Draco thrusters, so they're going to be essentially doing like a bigger version of the current trunk, but a smaller version of the trunk they'll use to deorbit the ISS. If that makes sense, it's like a stepping stone between current Dragon and the US deorbit Dragon. So it's kind of going to be like halfway between them. So extra fuel tanks, extra thrusters to boost the ISS.
Right. And actually, here, you guys may
Kind
have
of the
seen these
antithesis of
before.
what they're eventually going to do.
Kinda, yeah. Um, let me just pull this up real quick so we can get a visual of what this looks like.
Perhaps one of the reasons why the trunk isn't utilized to its fullest capacity all of the time is maybe because it's a bit of a pain to get into, perhaps. Like, unlike shuttle, for example, it's not really possible for an astronaut to EVA along the side of Dragon and then get into the trunk on the back. Dragon isn't really designed for having astronauts EVAing into its trunk like the shuttle was designed for having astronauts EVAing into the payload bay to access and service spacecraft, science experiments, things like that. So
they need a pressurized module so that they can reach out with a Canada arm and attach it to an open port or something so that they can get stuff inside the station.
You could maybe use the Bishop airlock or even the airlock on the Kibo module that's used to deploy like CubeSats and stuff if they can fit inside either of those. It's not a whole lot of space, but for some stuff you could potentially do that. But then you'd have to have what I don't know is if those CubeSat deployers have a gosh, not even I don't even know the right word. It's not like a contamination chamber, but you do have to do a little bit of prepping before you just expose something to the inside that has been outside of the space station, like in the case of the samples that they do, the material samples that they do outside the space station. It has to go through a
so
process before they expose that, right?
so it's
Go ahead, Jared.
so I'm trying to figure out, is the issue here specifically um where Dragon is docking at, simply because it's not in the original position where it was berthing. Like the original berthing area was accessible by the Canadarm2 that's up there, and this specific position that it's in now is not as easily accessible. Or like, I'm trying to figure out what the problem is here, because if
And I don't
like
even think that there is a problem because
okay,
even with the Dragon docking port, like if they're at the front of the station, yeah, it might have to go a little bit further. But if it's on the upper portion, that's exact opposite of one of the berthing spots that it used to be between the Nadir and Zenith facing ports. And don't forget that there's little modules all over the station so that the arm can walk. That's the whole thing.
yes,
Is the arm has two essentially mini docking docking ports on each end of it, and it can go to any spot around the station. So even if they are in an inconvenient spot, there's still places where they can attach to get the Canadarm as close as possible, and then reach into the back of the trunk. And any sort of external platform that's back there has that same sort of grappling fixture that the Canadarm uses to walk over the station on that payload, so that it can just go in, grab that from that grapple system, and pull it out of the trunk and place it where it needs to be, whether it be, eventually, for like in the case of the rollout solar arrays, they first place them in a spot where the astronauts would then be able to access them before they got them into place for their installation. So different, depending on what it is, there's different procedures for it, but it kind of seems to me like a lot of the external stuff at the space station is kind of done. So my feeling is that this isn't necessarily a problem. It's just a lack of stuff on the manifest to be put on the outside. And that's why they don't have a whole lot of stuff in the trunk there. That's the best answer I can come up with after looking into this for quite some time.
Is that like just living with your old car's bald tires through one last winter before you sell it?
For example, the Dana Weigel, the ISS program manager at NASA, was asked in the recent post-launch press conference, what's next for what's the next EVA up for at the International Space Station on the US side at least. And the next spacewalk is actually, one of the spacewalks which is going to start to kind of prepare the station for the deorbit eventually in 5 years' time. They're going to be working on kind of migrating some of the power routing that they do at the station, just to add some redundancy in there for when that deorbit starts. So, things now, even though that deorbit might be 5 years away, things now are starting to take place to prepare for that, and that also makes perfect sense. Why would you launch brand new hardware to a space station which is going to be at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean in 5 years' time?
Maybe 5 years' time.
We'll see.
Sorry, I'm just seeing in the chat room, seems like people are having problems with a lot of ads playing. Not sure why that's happening, because I set this as unmonetized, so I'm not sure why you're getting a bunch of ads and interruptions during the stream. I apologize about that, everybody.
This is YouTube. YouTube runs ads, I think.
Yeah.
Breaking news. YouTube has adverts.
Even when you turn it off, it runs them anyway.
Yeah. And just...
Great. Sorry about that, everyone.
Yeah. And also, we don't control when they pop up either. So YouTube just goes, oh, hey, good time for this to happen on our behalf. So they don't... We can't tell YouTube to not or not do that. So... yeah, wish we could, but then no.
Well, in any case, did you guys see the test launch of Gilmore space?
Yes. Oh man,
I heard it didn't go well.
Kind of, sort of. Like, it didn't go well, but it also, for it being a failure, was maybe one of the best that I've seen. Let me explain. First, let me share this. I put together an edit of this. And you guys have heard of the Astra slide, right? Rocket power slide. Well, instead of this being a Astra slide, I'm calling this the Gilmore glide because it went so well. There we go. Let me play this now and make sure it's just a little bit of audio, but not a whole ton. So yeah, what's funny is that their CEO was saying that they were expecting maybe 30 to 40 seconds of flight anyway, which is a little disappointing to hear. But check this out. They have an engine that fails. And then they have a second engine that fails.
Oh no.
Somehow the GNC and thrusters are keeping it upright. And then, as Ryan pointed out on X, did we just witness the first accidental propulsive landing?
Because it doesn't blow up. It doesn't do a huge kaboom like Starship 36 did. It just lands, tips over, and goes... and then just, all of the liquid oxygen and the oxidizer just kind of drifts across the landscape. It doesn't go boom, it just goes...
That's so crazy. And
Sorry,
How
I
did they
hit the
do
ground.
that?
Good question. Good question. Again, the
Ugh.
first accidental propulsive landing. This looked like one of those water tests where hits the water, the engine shut off, and then it just tipped over. And oh
Well-
yeah, their payload, a jar of Vegemite, despite being dirty, survived.
Well, sort of.
Sorta.
And you know
yeah,
what?
Kinda, sorta. Yeah.
Having had Vegemite on toast before, I'm sure it tasted just the same.
Oh my gosh. No offense, Australians.
No, Vegemite's good, so you're all good.
Oh my goodness.
That's kind of heartbreaking. I know their propulsion director, and it's sad to see them not make it. Yeah.
What's interesting though is this is a hybrid rocket using a solid fuel and a liquid oxidizer. So maybe that's the reason why we didn't get that giant explosion that we would have expected seeing something like this.
You wouldn't get combustion because you're not actually mixing fuel and propellant.
So what are they using? Is it the classic rubber and nitrous
fuel and
oxide?
oxidizer.
I think so. I think that it's just your HTBP, however you say that, but I'm not 100% sure either.
I had a deep look. I really tried to find it. I've seen that answer. I've seen someone on X saying it was polyethylene, like Viaspace is trying to do. No one actually seems to know a decisive answer for sure. All I found from Gilmore is solid. Like
solid.
Okay, brilliant.
Solid.
That's very useful information there, Gilmore. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
There was a thing on LinkedIn too, which I'm not going to pull up now, but was really interesting to see. Their CEO was kind of putting a little bit of blame on the Australian Aviation Authority because it took.
Tell me something new. Space company CEOs blaming the regulatory bodies.
Weird thing, because he was saying it took them 18 months in order to get the license to do this. That the rocket has been ready for over a year and a half to launch, but they didn't have the proper licensing and authority to do it. So his thing that he was trying to say on LinkedIn was that because it had been sitting for so long, we at Gilmore Space, not me, but this is his words, were worried that we had so much degradation from it sitting so long and just kind of YOLO'd it. We didn't expect to, we were happy that this even happened at all because we were worried that it wasn't even going to launch after having sat for so long. Yeah. So maybe kind of sort of like that's kind of a backhanded way to blame the aviation authority at the same time, like blaming your own stuff for having it sitting so long. But at the same time, that is kind of one benefit of hybrids is you can store it for a little while anyway and somewhat easier to transport, but they have their problems. There's a reason why the industry doesn't use them very much.
They needed a waiver for the solids, probably. That would have solved all of their problems, and that would have performed, perfectly. Because the solids have been in storage for 18 months. But no, I say earlier, jokingly, space companies, CEOs blaming the regulatory bodies. What's new? But 18 months is, I thought 4 months with Virgin Orbit was bad at Cornwall. 18 months, SpaceX complains after having to wait 2 extra weeks. Like 18 months is a considerable amount of time to have your vehicle ready to go, and the regulatory bodies needing to catch up. Because obviously this is the first time a commercial launch has taken place from Australia. It's the first time these regulatory bodies, the Australian Space Agency, the Australian their version of the FAA, their Civil Aviation Authority, working together to regulate a commercial launch. This is the first time they've done it. So yes, it will probably take a little bit more time, but 18 months, that's a long time. 18 months is quite a long time.
Yeah. I think that's a cautionary, and the addition of another data point in a cautionary tale against civil aviation authorities being used to regulate launches.
Yeah,
I don't know why they struggle so much, to be honest. I really don't.
Yeah.
Lesson to startups too. Even if you're not ready to launch, get started on your application early.
It's not but that's the thing though, is you can't.
You
So
can't really
one of
properly apply if you don't have the right data, right?
but one of the things that we had difficulty with is we couldn't do anything to prove that we were within their satisfaction of what regulations they wanted to us to be in satisfaction of until we had the hardware in place and we are doing the things that we needed to do. Like, it was an interim step. You have to prove that you can do it by proving that you can do it. And you know, them stepping on it and waiting and having to like regroup after every successive step in order to be able to figure out what the next step is, like that all takes way too much time. Way too much time. And I mean, that should be a lesson to both sides. The aviation authorities, whether civil or federal, need to have a process that is streamlined to be able to get companies to launch quicker. And at the same time, launch companies need to figure out how to be able to weather and survive that storm and have all their ducks in a row in order to be able to prove that they can go to the next step, whatever the steps are. But I think probably part of the problem is that the next step isn't clear until the first step has been completed, and you really can't enter into that conversation until you have hardware in place and you're ready to go with launches or whatever. Like, we couldn't use at VO, we couldn't use any of our past experience to show as a demonstration of our ability to execute when we were in Cornwall. We had to prove it there. So how do you prove it there unless all your hardware is there, unless all your people are there, unless you're actually doing all of those things? Like, it's frustrating. I feel
Yeah.
for them. But yeah, 18 months is absurd.
It's a long time.
Mm.
Couple comments.
And
Oh, go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
I was just going to say that the problem was the engines, right? We saw one engine cut out just after liftoff, and then about 10 seconds later, another engine cut out. So it would be it's easy to assume that there appears to have been some sort of combustion issue there with how the exhaust was, you know, the color of it and the sort of shape it was making. So perhaps the solid fuel had degraded to a point where that the proper combustion they were expecting could no longer take place because the fuel was just, you know, not. It has been sitting there for a year and a half. It's gotten to a point where it just couldn't combust properly.
Yeah.
Or in the manner they expected. I'll put it that way.
And I think the reason for that is that when you make any kind of plastics over time, they outgas some of the chemicals that are within them, which is why you get that new car smell. So if they had new castings and they were outgassing for 18 months, then it probably loses part of its flammability properties.
Yeah.
New solid smell.
New
Yeah.
solid smell. Run if you smell that. No, just kidding.
I would say usually if you are outgassing for up to 18 months, I would usually say after several days, that's a good time to call a doctor. So 18 months in and of itself is extremely concerning.
Oh my gosh. Melanie. It is Australia, so their theory is that it filled up with spiders and snakes.
Wasn't Gilmore the one that like I think they sent out a photo that showed like a big like yellow crested cockatoo like biting
Yep.
a line into the rocket
Yep.
with like a thinking face as to why they had the abort. So I was just like, yeah, having a friend with one of those as a pet, they are big gremlin energy for such a little thing. So
Did one of those engines fail because of a nest that was built several months ago?
yeah. But hey, you know, it's at least good to fly it. You get the data, you see what's happening, and we're you know, it ended up being a what was that Astra meme that it was? They had like SpaceX showing it going up, and then Space Y it was going to the side, or something like that.
This was space negative Y because it's upside down.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we're all.
I mean, they're in the upside down. All they had to do was let go of the launch clamps, and it still fell back.
Yeah, it's fine. You know, we you know, if specifically Australia, you all fall up down there. But
on a serious note,
it's-
I thought it was super impressive that their thrusters were able to keep that thing upright despite 2 engine failures.
that's not easy to do.
No. So
So
even though this was an
They've got some
overall
beefy
failure,
RCS
that
on
was
that thing.
impressive. Sorry, what?
They've got some beefy RCS on that thing to keep because if you didn't know, they don't have the engines don't gimbal. Like all of that attitude
Yeah.
control is from reaction control thrusters, right? Like
Yeah,
they're pretty beefy to keep that vehicle pointing upright when half of the engines have shut off.
Mhm.
yeah, I was you could see the RCS fighting during it. So, and those are some big puffs coming off of it.
Yeah.
So, like those are some like Snoop Dogg style size puffs coming off in the RCS, and it's just like, damn, that thing is trying its hardest to hold it there. But you know, hey, at least you didn't blow up your pad. That's good.
Yeah.
So, right, and at least none of your launch pad cleared the tower before you did. So there's also that. So, you know,
And here's hoping
and I'm
that they
just, you
have
know, it's all good. So
here's hoping that they have more of these under construction and that they'll be able to try again
yeah,
soon.
yeah. Dada, don't do that. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be mean or anything. It's just it's
In any case, there was a handful of other things that happened this week that we might want to have more of a discussion about in After Dark. Like, for example, this week there was an announcement made of a test going on at NASA Marshall that they're finally working on cryogenic zero boil off technology for hydrolox engines, which is, I think, a huge deal. They weren't able to work on that for a long time, well over a decade, even though there'd been plans for it, in the 2000s and 2010s. It got blocked several times. But this technology is
Easy, Mike. Easy.
could be a
Easy.
breakthrough, because with hydrolox, liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, you can make that out of lunar ice using electrolysis to split it into liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. So for lunar operations, having zero boil off and being able to use every last drop of fuel for whatever your system you're using, whether you're using a lander or some sort of cycler going back and forth between Earth and Moon, this could be the technology that helps to enable that in a massive way. Maybe I'm wrong, but that seems like a huge deal to me.
good till the last drop.
The only way I can conceive of this working is if they're constantly chilling it to a point lower than its boiling temperature.
And that's exactly what NASA's doing. The way that
Yeah.
they are doing it is they have coils that go around the tank, kind of like the way with engine bell, like the F1's a great example of how they would flow chilled fuel through the part of the engine bell to keep it cool. Same sort of process, but instead of using the fuel itself, they're using chilled helium running through these extra coils that are wrapping
Shit.
around it.
Oh my god.
And then it's got a layer of insulation,
Oh my god.
and then another
Oh,
layer
boy.
of coils, and then another layer of insulation.
Oh,
One
that
coil,
just brought up like 16 other problems. Good luck.
one of those
Good
coils
luck.
is going to be at the freezing temperature, or below the boil off temperature of the liquid hydrogen, and the other coil is going to be for not as cold, but still very, very cold for the just below the boil off temperature of the liquid
Yikes.
oxygen. So why is this a bad
Coils
plan?
all the way down. Why is it
Why
a
is
bad
it
plan?
bad plan?
Do you know how hard it is to contain helium? It's almost as hard as it is to contain hydrogen.
I have no
So,
idea.
Let's take the two hardest things to contain, and we're gonna have them
Yeah.
need each other to work correctly.
Yeah. And not mix.
Yeah, I believe
Man.
if I'm recalling correctly, helium. No, I'm sorry. I believe that's incorrect. I was just about to say, isn't a helium atom smaller than a hydrogen atom? But I don't think so.
No,
I think it's just a little bit bigger.
Hydrogen is smaller.
Yeah.
Helium
Sorry.
is a little bit bigger, but not by much.
Been a decade since a chemistry class over here, so.
So when you're talking about leaks in the chemical industry, you can have a valve that is airtight, or watertight, or gas tight, or helium tight.
But you can only pick one?
Well, they get progressively more difficult.
Gotcha.
So if you are requesting a valve that is helium tight, that is tight. All the seals have like zero gap, zero tolerance for debris, for being out of shape. Opening and closing them is very difficult. You throw in the fact that it's got to be cryogenic, and you have the heating and shrinking, which changes the size and shape of all of your things inside of it that affect that seal. Like, this is a very difficult problem. This is a very difficult problem.
What temperature is the helium being kept at for this?
In
I-
one layer, it's over 400, or excuse me, under 400 degrees, negative 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Excuse me, and the other one
Oh,
is
shit.
over negative 200 degrees.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, that's in
good.
Fahrenheit. Sorry, I should go to the metric. Sorry, let me look.
That's
this up.
good. I was worried that they might be taking it down to like stupid cold temperatures, and now we're having to deal with like
Those are stupid cold temperatures. Are you kidding me?
No, because helium becomes superfluid at even colder temperatures, and superfluidity is absolutely like one of the most ridiculous things in physics.
Yeah.
Because like it suddenly you can have liquid helium deciding, capillary action, awesome. I'm just gonna go like straight up. I'm gonna flow straight up things against the force of gravity. Like it just basically takes physics, turns it on its head, spins it around, gives it 20 beers, and tells it walk a straight line. It just doesn't like end up working particularly well. So, wow, that is absolutely wild. So.
All right, so
And
for
and
one,
and that
the official
Go ahead.
number is 424 Fahrenheit or 217 degrees Celsius. Negative, my bad. The other one is negative 298 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 147 degrees Celsius.
Yikes. So we're still working with a gas, though, at that point.
Well, NASA's
Now
working
you've
on
put
this.
it into Celsius, I understand. Yeah, like I really
Sorry.
can grasp just how cold that temperature is.
Sorry. Something that is interesting to me is this is just a 90-day test campaign. They started it in early June. It'll be wrapping up next month in September. And my guess is maybe a month or two, maybe a couple of months after that, they'll publish the results and what they got, since it's NASA and this is a public program. At the same time that they're doing this, Blue Origin also, the same freaking day, announced, oh yeah, we're working on this stuff too. And we don't know how they did it, but over 10 years ago, United Launch Alliance figured this out quite a long time ago and never built it. So, and
Oh my gosh.
according to George Sowers, didn't even utilize any of the stuff that they invented on Centaur 5. So,
That's so funny.
not sure why they're not, but we'll see.
There's some material science that needs to go on here too, because you're running right up to the lowest temperature point that 316 L stainless steel can handle.
This is some good stuff.
I'm just glad that this is being worked on.
Yeah.
Whether or not NASA can be successful with it is another story, and I guess we'll find out in a couple of months whenever they post the results of this study. But I'm at least glad that they're working on it, and that
where's this
the
being
NASA Marshall
tested at?
Center, NASA Marshall Space Flight Center,
Oh goodness,
the
that
place
is
that has been
probably-
the SLS only for over a decade, is finally working on exotic stuff again, and I couldn't
That's
be happier
Alabama,
about it.
right?
That's right. That's
Oh
Alabama.
boy, that is where I would imagine would be one of the worst places to try to keep something cold. So,
Well, I mean, it's
I
not
would
too far off
say-
from Florida heat, right?
I would
So,
say
if
in
you can
Death
do it
Valley-
there,
you can do it anywhere.
I would say it would be easier in Death Valley because the air would be so much drier and you could exchange so much easier the heat there. In Alabama, you're just like you walk out of a shower and you're still in one as you're walking around. So, like, oh my god.
Well, maybe that's what all their extra layers of thermal blankets and stuff are for, to try to help with that. But their in-space purpose is, of course, to help, to block all the heat that gets generated when they're in sunlight. So,
Wow. All right. Well, good luck to it. So,
yeah.
I think we can all agree that this is the kind of thing that NASA should be working on, along with.
Yes.
It's similar to what Jared Isaacman was always talking about during his nomination process. Of NASA should be working on the things commercial companies don't want to, like, for example, nuclear propulsion, which he's a big advocate of. I feel like Zero Boil Off kind of goes into the same category of these future technologies which commercial space can utilize, but there's a huge amount of capital, effort, expertise, knowledge, workforce that a government agency can put into this that the commercial industry, a lot of companies can't. Blue Origin is working on this, as we have spoken about. As Mike said, ULA has looked into this before as well. But nobody has gotten to the point where they've actually implemented this into a spacecraft that can fly into space. This is exactly what NASA should be working on. They shouldn't be building rockets. They shouldn't be flying rockets. They should be working to perfect the techniques that the rest of the industry can use.
1,000%.
Yep. They should be doing the impossible to make it commercially viable.
And I mean, there's lots of paths too for technology that NASA develops to be used by commercial companies. It's not like they can't use it. The inflatable technology, Transhab, for example, Bigelow Aerospace did that. Sierra Space is using it now. Lockheed Martin is even working on it. Same technology from the same patent that NASA developed in the 90s. The Pika heat shield, that technology was originally developed by NASA, taken over by SpaceX, and they made their own changes and additions to it. And now it's their own proprietary thing of Pika X, but regular Pika is still a thing that anybody, at least a United States company, could get a hold of and start working with because it was a technology developed with public funds and it's out there for the public use. So
you can even grab data from missions. SpaceX in the early days of getting Falcon 9 booster testing for propulsive landing was pulling data from JPL from Mars entry descent landing, because the areas had very similar physical properties that they had to deal with. So if y'all need some data, I know an agency.
I know a guy.
And even in the case of this cryogenic study, even if it doesn't work, that's still data for people who are working on this to be like, okay, here's what not to do. That's a great place to start from.
Yeah, look at the space shuttle.
Somebody remind me to talk. Somebody remind me to talk about slush in After Dark.
About slush. Okay. Well, I think we should probably wrap things up here. Did want to give a big thank you to Dave Avery for faithlessly always giving us 5 gifted memberships every show, and also to Sakura's Light, who also just gifted 5 Tomorrow memberships. So for those of you who are on the receiving end of that and just received a gifted membership, you'll be able to join in our After Dark right after this. And big thank you to everyone who has been supporting us already. As a matter of fact, we did have quite a few new members who signed up on our ground support level. Big thank you to Live Regret or Live Regret, Mark Pert, Sedated Wee, Sandy, Gabriel Fuentes, Liam Atkins, good to see you back, Josh Simpson, Cron Deviot, Philip Jacobs, Nathan Moline, On Orbit Studio, Zero Stage News, Steve Brown, Skash Kitsune, Jeffrey, Steve I, Tony James, Joel Carley, and Rafael Toro VIP. Thank you very much to each and every one of you. And for everyone who's also been supporting us on our suborbital, orbital, and escape velocity levels for quite some time now. Thank you to everyone who is supporting our show. This is the reason that we're able to do this, and with more support, we can continue to bring more space news content to you guys and get access to exclusive content like our After Dark show coming up right after this. So thank you again to everyone who joined us today for these discussions. Definitely want to know what you guys think about this. We've had some great comments during the live show, but for those of you watching on demand after our live show, definitely let us know what you think about some of these developments when it comes to SpaceX. What is going to happen with their boost trunk? When do you think that they're going to have their new landing zones ready to go at either 40 or Launch Complex 39A? And do you think that this technology that NASA is working on is the right direction, whether or not it is successful or fails. So let us know in the comments what you think. And for those of you watching live, you'll be able to get our access to our After Dark show right after this if you are a member. So thank you everyone for joining us today. That's it for our show. Keep moving onwards and upwards, everyone. And until the next time we see you, keep moving onwards and upwards. And don't forget, Ad Astra, to the stars.